They didn't use words. They didn't scream. They just held me. And when I heard the blade, I knew they weren't just cutting my hair. They were trying to take something much deeper. My name is Eliza. I was 12 years old the day they shaved my head in the slave quarters. The ground was dry. Dust floated in the air like smoke. I woke up next to my little sister, Dora, on the hard floor of the hut. Our shared blanket barely covered us both, but we held on to it like a secret. Every Sunday, before the sun came up, my mother Rebecca would braid my hair. She said our ancestors used to hide paths to freedom in those braids. 2 tight knots meant turn back. 3 wide loops meant go forward. She didn't teach me just to be pretty. She taught me to remember. But one morning, Madame Lenora walked by while I was sweeping the steps. She paused behind me, tugged one of my braids sharply, and muttered, "This one thinks she's a queen." The next day, 2 men were waiting for me behind the kitchen. One grabbed my arms. The other shaved my head clean. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Even when I saw my mother trying to reach me getting knocked down with a rifle butt, I stayed still. Even when Dora shouted my name from across the yard, I didn't move. I closed my eyes and held on to the sound of my mother's voice saying, "You are not your hair. You are what's inside." That night, my mother crawled to my side, bruised and bleeding. She pulled my head into her lap and whispered with tears in her eyes, "They can take what they see, Eliza, but they'll never touch what you carry inside." After they shaved my head, they left me on the dirt floor like I was nothing. No one looked at me. No one spoke. It was like I had disappeared, like my hair was the only part of me that mattered. The other girls in the quarters started avoiding me, not because they hated me, because they were afraid. Afraid the same would happen to them. Afraid that my silence might be contagious. My mother, Rebecca, was still recovering. Her face was swollen, her eyes tired, but she never stopped watching, even when she had no strength to speak. She watched me like she was waiting for something to return. A week later, they moved me to the sewing room, said I wasn't fit for the fields anymore. I was too small, too quiet. They sent me to help Abigail, one of the oldest women on the plantation. Abigail was silent too. Her fingers moved like water over the fabric, sharp, knowing. I thought I was just there to fold linens and thread needles. But the truth was, Abigail had been waiting for someone like me. It took days before she even spoke a word to me. But then one afternoon, she turned to me and said, "They took your crown, girl. But they didn't take your mind." She handed me a scrap of cloth and a dull needle. Then she taught me how to stitch not just seams, but signs. Small marks hidden in hems. Symbols buried in sleeves. Stories whispered in fabric.com. "This curve means a safe house," she whispered. "This stitch means danger." She wasn't just sewing clothes. She was sewing survival. That night, I laid awake thinking about what my mother used to say. They can take what they see. But now I was learning. They can't take what you pass on in silence. I still didn't have my hair. But with every stitch, I was starting to feel whole again. And that was more dangerous than any braid I'd ever worn. The sewing room became my shelter. Among needles, fabric scraps, and dust, I found a rhythm that made the world quiet again. Abigail didn't speak often, but when she did, it was like scripture. She taught me to stitch letters into patterns, to curve threads into warnings, to fold messages so deep they looked like nothing at all. My hands learned fast. Soon, I was adding my own symbols, my own voice. At first, just small signs. A loop in the corner of a headscarf for a woman who had lost her son. A double stitch on a man's sleeve who whispered at night about escape. We never spoke names. We never gave dates. But somehow, those threads carried hope. Then Dora came to me one evening. "I want to learn," she said softly. I hesitated. She was still so young, but I saw the fire in her eyes, quiet, like mine, but burning. We stitched together at night, under old blankets lit by moonlight through the cracks. She was clumsy at first, but her heart was steady. More and more, people began to understand. A wave of whispers began to flow through the quarters, not loud, not reckless, but steady. Then it happened. One of the new girls, nervous and hungry for freedom, told the wrong person. She said there was a girl who stitched secrets into clothes, said there was a way out written in fabric. The next morning, they called us, Abigail, me, and Dora. The master sat in his chair beneath the tree, with Lenora by his side, fanning herself like nothing was wrong. He asked, "Who taught us?" No one answered. Then Abigail stepped forward. "It was me," she said. He looked at her, then pointed at Dora, and her. She only mended buttons. That was the last time I saw Abigail in the sewing room. They sent her to the charcoal shed, taut, dark, silent. No more thread, no more fabric, just fire and ash. That night, I cried like I hadn't in years, not because they hurt me, but because they hurt the woman who gave me back my voice. And I remembered what she once told me. Freedom has a price, girl, but it's worth every stitch. The next day, the sewing room felt like a tomb. Abigail's chair sat empty. Her scissors were gone, and so was the warmth she left behind. No one said a word, not Dora, not me. We stitched in silence, pretending the dust in our eyes was from the sun. I wanted to stop. I wanted to throw the needle away and become invisible again. I thought, maybe if I stayed quiet, they'd leave me and my sister alone. But then I found it. Folded beneath the last garment, Abigail had sewn a small piece of cloth. On it, just 3 stitched letters, barely visible. 8. Abigail divorced. Her mark, her final message. I stared at it until my hands stopped shaking, and in that moment, I knew. If I stopped, they'd win. That night, I pulled out a hidden scrap of fabric I had kept beneath my bedding. It was nothing special, frayed, stained, but it was mine. I took out my needle, trembling, and stitched 3 words. Still I sew. The next morning, I wore that cloth folded in my pocket like armor. Dora saw it and smiled for the first time in days. We began again. Quietly, carefully. We stitched into collars, into apron linings, into the undersides of cuffs. But this time, we didn't just stitch escape. We stitched remembrance. Names, dates. Small hearts for mothers lost. Lines of waves for those who died crossing them. We stitched stories they tried to erase, and slowly, others returned to us. One girl brought a scrap of her mother's shawl. Another, the hem of a dress passed down through 3 generations. We weren't just making clothes anymore. We were building memory, one thread at a time. I didn't know if Abigail would ever see it, but I knew she'd feel it. And I swore to myself, as long as my hands can hold a needle, I will never sew in silence again. Many years passed. Chains turned into whispers. Whispers turned into freedom papers. And freedom turned into forgetting. But I never forgot. Long after the plantation was abandoned, long after the quarters rotted into the ground, I carried with me a bundle wrapped in cloth, old, faded, soft with time. Inside it, a quilt. Not just any quilt. Each patch held a name. Each row, a year. Each stitch, a moment no one else remembered but me. My mother's name was stitched at the center, Rebecca. Next to hers, Doris, and beside them, a red thread that spelled the initials ADV. Abigail divorced. Her name never written in books, never carved in stone, but it lives in my stitches. That quilt was sewn in the dark, with fingers that ached and eyes that fought sleep. It wasn't made to warm a body. It was made to protect memory. Sometimes I unfold it across my lap and trace the lines with these old hands. I feel the pull of every moment, every risk, every tear that soaked the thread. They tried to erase us, tried to cut us down like weeds. But what they didn't know is that women like us don't vanish. We hide in patterns, in lullabies, in braids, in cloth. Now I sit on this porch, over 100 years old, telling you this because someone has to carry it next. Not just the pain, but the courage, the fire that burned even after they shaved our heads and tried to shame our souls. And if you're listening to me now, child, hold on to your story. Even if they try to cut it away, stitch it into something that will outlive you. Because the strongest threads are the ones they never see coming.